Inside British versus American prisons. The shocking truth you were never told. The American prison machine. The story of the American prison system begins long before a sentence is ever read out in a courtroom. It begins in the streets, in the cities, and in the cycles of poverty and punishment that feed an empire of incarceration. For decades, the United States has carried a grim title, the world's largest jailer. Over 2 million people are behind bars, more than any other country on earth. To outsiders, those numbers alone are staggering. But behind those statistics lies a deeper truth, one written in concrete, steel, and silence. Inside an American prison, the day begins before the sun. The heavy clang of metal doors echoes through the corridors like a ritual. Count time. Hundreds of men stand shoulder to shoulder in silence as guards move down the line. Every head must be accounted for. Every movement controlled. It's a system built on order and fear. The American penal system was never designed for comfort. It was designed for control. From the maximum security units in California to the supermax facilities like ADX Florence in Colorado, often called the Alcatraz of the Rockies, every square inch is engineered to isolate, contain, and break the will of those inside. Here, inmates spend 23 hours a day in a concrete box no larger than a parking space. 1 hour of recreation, alone in another cage, if the schedule allows. The silence is deafening. For some, it lasts years. For others, decades. The punishment doesn't stop at the loss of freedom. In many American prisons, rehabilitation takes a back seat to retribution. Mandatory minimums and three-strike laws have created a system where sentences often stretch beyond reason. For nonviolent crimes, men and women can spend the better part of their lives behind bars. The US calls it justice. Others call it mass incarceration. But what's daily life like for those trapped inside? In the general population wings, hierarchy rules. The guards control the gates, but the inmates control the tiers. Every prison has its own unwritten laws. Every yard its own tribes. Gangs such as the Aryan Brotherhood, the Bloods, the Crips, and the Mexican Mafia hold invisible power that can be stronger than the wardens themselves. Disrespect the wrong person, walk into the wrong cell, or look someone in the eye for too long, and the punishment can come swift and silent. Violence is a constant hum beneath the surface. Inmates learn fast. They learn how to move, who to talk to, and when to keep their mouths shut. The cafeteria, known as the chow hall, is one of the most dangerous places in any facility. Meals last just 15 minutes, but they're an eternity in tension. One dropped tray, one wrong word can ignite chaos. And when the fights break out, they're brutal. Shanks, homemade knives fashioned from toothbrushes, metal scraps, or even melted plastic, become the currency of survival. For the guards, it's a battle of endurance. Overcrowded facilities mean one officer can oversee up to 100 inmates. Control is often maintained through intimidation and punishment. Solitary confinement, loss of privileges, strip searches. Tools meant to enforce obedience, but which often deepen anger and hopelessness. Still, the human spirit finds strange ways to survive. Some inmates turn to religion. Others to art or education. In a few prisons, rare programs allow inmates to earn diplomas or learn trades. But such opportunities are scarce. Funding cuts and staff shortages have stripped rehabilitation programs to their bones. In the United States, the average cost of housing an inmate per year is over $30,000. Yet little of that goes to preparing them for life after release. Instead, they are released into a world that no longer wants them. A world that sees a record, not a person. And so the cycle begins again. Within 3 years of release, nearly 2/3 of inmates reoffend. The same system that claimed to rehabilitate them pulls them back in like gravity. But perhaps the most haunting aspect of the American prison system is its inequality. Step inside a high-security prison in Alabama, and you'll find overcrowded dorms where men sleep inches apart on thin metal bunks. Move north to a private facility in Arizona, and you'll find corporations profiting from each inmate's confinement. Private prisons, run for profit, turn incarceration into business. The longer someone stays, the more money they make. Critics call it the prison industrial complex. Supporters call it efficient. Either way, human lives become numbers on a spreadsheet. Documentaries have shown glimpses of this reality: 13th, The Farm, Angola, USA, and Inside America's Toughest Prisons. They reveal a system bursting at its seams, built on a promise of justice but fueled by politics, poverty, and profit. And yet, despite its darkness, the American prison system remains largely hidden from view. The public rarely sees what happens beyond the walls, unless a riot makes the news. The conditions themselves vary widely. In some facilities, prisoners work long hours in kitchens, factories, or fields, earning as little as 20 cents an hour. In others, they endure rotting food, broken plumbing, and stifling heat. In 2023, reports from Mississippi's Parchman Farm prison revealed rats, black mold, and sewage leaks in the living quarters. Even more shocking, suicides and untreated mental illness continue to climb. For those inside, hope is often the rarest commodity of all. But not every story ends in despair. Some states are experimenting with new approaches. Programs in places like Oregon and Colorado emphasize therapy, education, and skill building, borrowing ideas from European models. The results? Lower violence rates, better reintegration, and fewer repeat offenses. Still, these programs are exceptions, not the rule. For the majority, the system remains unforgiving. It's a place where punishment is visible, but humanity is often invisible. A place where sentences outlast redemption. From the outside, it's easy to think of American prisons as places where criminals simply get what they deserve. But step closer and you see a society wrestling with its own conscience. How did a nation built on freedom become the land of mass incarceration? Why do its prisons look more like warehouses than places of reform? Behind every barred window is a story, a man or woman caught in the machinery of justice, serving time not just for their crimes, but for the system's failures. And as the years pass, each day bleeds into the next, counted not in hours but in years. For many, freedom becomes a distant memory. For some, it's a dream that never returns. This is the American prison system, vast, unrelenting, and deeply divided between punishment and redemption. A mirror reflecting the darker side of a nation that claims to be free. And as the gates close each night, one question remains. Is the system protecting society, or slowly destroying it from within? Inside the walls of a British prison. Across the Atlantic Ocean, in a land known for its order and restraint, the story of imprisonment unfolds differently. In Britain, justice wears a quieter face. The cells are smaller, the uniforms simpler, and the rules, while strict, carry an air of civility. To the outside world, British prisons are often described as rehabilitative, humane, even progressive. But step inside and the illusion of calm begins to fracture. Britain's prison system houses over 85,000 inmates across England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. On paper, it's a model designed to reform, not to crush. Yet the reality is far more complex, a delicate balance between compassion and chaos. The morning begins not with the roar of alarms but the heavy click of keys. Officers, known as prison staff rather than guards, unlock cells one by one. The relationship between inmates and officers here is meant to be less militarized, more human. Conversations replace commands. Good morning replaces, get up. But behind the politeness lies tension. The walls may be British, but the pressure inside is universal. Many of the United Kingdom's prisons are decades old, some built in the Victorian era. Narrow corridors, damp stone, and failing infrastructure haunt facilities like HMP Pentonville or HMP Wandsworth. Cells originally designed for one person now hold two, sometimes three. Mattresses pushed against cold brick. Toilets without privacy. Mice skittering across the floor at night. The problem has a name that echoes through official reports: overcrowding. Inmates here serve shorter sentences compared to their American counterparts, but conditions can be equally punishing. Understaffing has become an epidemic. Reports show that in some institutions, one officer oversees up to 80 inmates. Fights break out. Contraband floods in. Drugs, especially synthetic ones like spice, spread like wildfire, turning calm corridors into chaos. And while Britain speaks of rehabilitation, many prisons struggle simply to maintain control. Yet, the heart of the British prison philosophy remains distinct. Here, rehabilitation is not an afterthought, it's a stated goal. Education programs, counseling, drug recovery initiatives, and job training schemes form the backbone of the system's identity. In theory, every prisoner should leave better than they arrived. In practice, that promise often collides with reality. At facilities like HMP Hollesley Bay, sometimes called an open prison, inmates live in dorm-style housing with limited supervision. They work jobs, study, and prepare for release. It's part of a reintegration process designed to help them return to society with dignity. But these are the exceptions, not the norm. The majority remain locked behind heavy doors in overcrowded conditions, battling boredom, depression, and violence. Life inside a typical British prison follows a strict but monotonous rhythm. Cells open around 8 a.m., giving prisoners access to communal areas. Some head to workshops, repairing bicycles, cooking meals, or packaging goods. Others attend classes in math, reading, or basic IT skills. At midday, the clang of metal returns as everyone is locked in for roll call. Afternoons might bring exercise in the yard, visits from family, or time in the library. By 5 p.m. the cells close again, and stay that way until morning. But beyond these routines, the invisible battles are constant. Mental health issues plague the system. Over 70% of inmates report some form of mental illness. Self-harm incidents have tripled in the last decade. Suicides are rising. The staff, overworked and undertrained, face burnout and trauma of their own. What was meant to be a place of reform too often becomes a warehouse for societies forgotten. Still, the British model holds to its belief in second chances. Inmates can earn privileges through good behavior, extra visits, personal TVs, even the chance to work outside the walls. Programs like Through the Gate offer post-release support, help with finding housing, employment, and counseling. It's a structure built to restore, not destroy. But critics argue it's falling apart under the weight of neglect. In recent years, investigative documentaries, like BBC's Life Inside the UK's Toughest Prisons, have exposed scenes of violence, corruption, and despair. Inmates high on synthetic drugs. Officers cornered by riots. One report revealed that assaults on staff had doubled within 5 years. Even the prisons once considered models of reform, like HMP Grendon, known for its therapy-based approach, struggled to sustain their ideals amid funding cuts. The irony of the British system lies in its contrasts. A prisoner in the UK might attend a class on anger management in the morning, and witness a stabbing by afternoon. He might speak to a kind-hearted officer one day, and be locked in his cell for 23 hours the next because of staff shortages. It's a system stretched thin between intention and reality. But there are glimpses of hope, small victories amid the struggle. At HMP Stafford, an initiative known as the Listener Scheme, run by the Samaritans, trains inmates to counsel their peers, reducing suicide risks. At HMP Brixton, former gang members mentor young offenders, steering them away from the paths they once walked. And at HMP Coldingley, art and design programs allow prisoners to paint, sculpt, and express what words cannot. These moments, fleeting as they are, remind the world that rehabilitation isn't just a slogan, it's a lifeline. Yet despite these efforts, public opinion remains divided. Some believe British prisons are too lenient, calling them holiday camps, compared to the brutal conditions in America. But those who've been inside tell another story. They speak of isolation, fear, and the quiet erosion of self-worth. The difference is not that British prisons are softer, it's that their punishment comes wrapped in silence rather than violence. In one corner of the system sits a place like HMP Frankland, a Category A facility holding Britain's most dangerous offenders, murderers, terrorists, and serial killers. Here, security is absolute. Steel doors, reinforced glass, endless CCTV. But even here, officers call inmates by name. Rehabilitation remains part of the language, even for the worst of the worst. It's a small but vital distinction. The system aims to manage human beings, not monsters. For those nearing release, freedom often comes with fear. The outside world has changed. Technology, jobs, family, everything feels distant. Yet unlike in America, many British prisoners receive structured re-entry plans. Probation officers, halfway houses, and social programs attempt to bridge the gap between prison life and society. Still, the success rate varies. Roughly half of released prisoners re-offend within a year, a sobering reminder that reform, no matter how well-intentioned, isn't easy. In the end, the British prison system stands as a paradox. It speaks the language of rehabilitation, yet often fails to deliver it fully. It condemns violence, yet cannot escape it. It claims to offer second chances, yet sends many back through its revolving doors. But perhaps its greatest strength lies in its self-awareness. Britain continues to question its methods, debate its reforms, and search for a better way. In recent years, new pilot prisons have emerged, facilities like HMP Berwyn in Wales, designed with open spaces, digital access, and a focus on education. Critics call it naive. Supporters call it the future. Between its crumbling walls and modern experiments, the British system reveals a nation trying to balance justice with mercy. A system that seeks to fix the broken rather than bury them alive. But as reports of riots, suicides, and drug abuse continue to rise, one question remains. Can a system built on ideals survive the weight of its own reality? Because while America's prisons shout their cruelty in the open, Britain's whisper theirs through cracks in the concrete. Two systems, one struggle. From a distance, the prisons of the United States and the United Kingdom look like reflections of two very different worlds. One, vast and unrelenting, a fortress of concrete, metal, and punishment. The other, smaller and restrained, a labyrinth of rules and rehabilitation. But when the cell doors close, both reveal the same truth. Behind every wall, humanity and justice fight for survival. The American prison system is built on fear and control, a legacy of tough-on-crime politics that turned punishment into policy. The British system, by contrast, was born from ideals of reform and restoration, a belief that even the worst can change. Yet neither system fully delivers what it promises. Both nations, despite their differences, struggle to answer the same question. What is prison truly for? The weight of numbers. Start with the statistics. In the United States, over 2 million people live behind bars. In Britain, the number is closer to 85,000. At first glance, the difference seems staggering, a triumph for the British model. But numbers alone don't tell the whole story. America's prisons are swollen by mandatory sentencing laws, drug-related convictions, and decades of zero-tolerance policies. In some states, a minor theft or nonviolent drug charge can lead to years, even decades, behind bars. In Britain, sentences are shorter. The average prisoner serves less than 2 years. Yet overcrowding remains chronic. Inmates sleep 2 or 3 to a cell built for 1. Both systems, in their own way, are suffocating. The contrast lies in philosophy. America punishes. Britain corrects or tries to. But when budgets shrink and tempers rise, ideals crumble quickly. Rehabilitation becomes a slogan, not a strategy. Violence, power, and survival. Step inside an American maximum security prison, and the atmosphere hits like a physical weight. Every corridor hums with tension. Gangs carve invisible territories, enforcing racial boundaries and codes of loyalty that rival the outside world. Violence is not an exception, it's an ecosystem. Guards wear body armor. Cameras scan every corner. And yet, assaults, stabbings, and riots persist. In Britain, the violence takes a different form. It's quieter but no less real. Here, the threat often comes not from organized gangs but from chaos born of overcrowding and neglect. Inmates high on synthetic drugs like spice turn unpredictable and dangerous. Officers are outnumbered, exhausted, and afraid. Control slips away not through force but through fatigue. In both systems, fear is currency. In America, it's enforced through isolation and strength. In Britain, it spreads through instability and uncertainty. Either way, survival becomes an inmate's first education. Punishment versus rehabilitation. The greatest divide between these two systems lies not in their walls, but in their purpose. In the United States, the dominant belief has long been that crime deserves retribution. A person commits a wrong, they pay a price. That price is measured in years, not lessons learned. But punishment without transformation breeds repetition. Within 3 years of release, more than 60% of American inmates are rearrested. For many, prison is not an endpoint, it's a revolving door. The British system, on the other hand, was built around rehabilitation, a word that still echoes in its policy papers and parliamentary debates. Education, therapy, and social reintegration are cornerstones of its design. But even this foundation is crumbling under pressure. Budget cuts have gutted programs. Staff shortages make meaningful reform nearly impossible. Rehabilitation has become an aspiration struggling to survive reality. Still, there are moments of hope in both nations. In the U.S., small pilot programs in Oregon and North Dakota experiment with Nordic-style prisons, open layouts, educational focus, and humane treatment. In the U.K., prisons like Berwyn and Grendon still champion therapy, education, and restorative justice. They remind the world that change, while fragile, is possible. Life after prison. For most inmates, the true test comes not inside but after release. In America, ex-prisoners return to a society that often rejects them completely. Criminal records follow them for life, closing doors to jobs, housing, and education. Voting rights are stripped. Trust is gone. The result? Many have no path forward but the one that led them back inside. In Britain, re-entry is less brutal, but not easy. Parole systems, halfway houses, and probation officers offer support, but underfunding leaves cracks wide enough to fall through. Nearly half of released inmates reoffend within a year. The system gives a map but not the means. Both systems reveal a painful paradox. We imprison people to protect society, yet release them broken, unprepared, and desperate. It's a cycle that serves neither justice nor safety, only repetition. The economics of incarceration. Then there's the money. In America, prison is an industry. Private corporations run entire facilities, earning billions in profit from government contracts. Each inmate becomes a number in a ledger, a source of labor, a commodity to manage. Critics call it the prison industrial complex, a system where punishment and profit intertwine. In Britain, profit plays a smaller role, but privatization is rising. Companies like G4S and Serco manage some of the largest prisons in the country. And when profit meets punishment, the results are predictable. Cost-cutting, understaffing, and neglect. Both nations spend enormous sums keeping people behind bars. The US spends over $80 billion a year on incarceration. The UK spends billions more maintaining aging facilities. Imagine what even a fraction of that could do if spent on education, prevention, or mental health instead. But prisons persist, because they are easy answers to hard problems. Society fears crime and prisons promise control, even when that control breeds more crime in return. Culture and perception. In the US, prison has become part of the cultural landscape. Movies, music, and news reports glorify or vilify it. From hip-hop lyrics to Hollywood thrillers, incarceration is woven into the American story. The result? A public that accepts harsh punishment as normal, even necessary. In the UK, the narrative is quieter. There's less spectacle, fewer headlines, but just as much pain. British prisons are often described as civilized, but beneath that label lies despair. Here, inmates don't vanish into vast supermaxes, they vanish into silence. Forgotten not through cruelty but through indifference. The human cost. Strip away the statistics and what remains are lives. Men and women, some guilty, some wrongly accused, all shaped by the walls that surround them. In both systems, the price of justice is often paid in humanity. Families are torn apart. Children grow up without parents. Mental illness festers untreated. And the cycle of poverty and incarceration deepens. Ask a former inmate from Mississippi what prison taught him and he might say, how to survive. Ask one from Manchester and he might say, how to disappear. Different accents. Same pain. The mirror of justice. When you place the two systems side by side, a strange reflection emerges. The American prison screams its cruelty in the open, brutal, visible, unapologetic. The British prison whispers its suffering behind bureaucracy and polite restraint. One breaks bodies, the other breaks minds. But which is tougher? That depends on what toughness means. If it means physical suffering, endless isolation, and fear of violence, America wins. If it means psychological erosion, quiet hopelessness, and the slow loss of self, Britain does. In truth, both are tough in different ways, and both fail in the same one, the failure to heal. A truly effective system would balance accountability with compassion, punishment with purpose. It would not just lock people away, it would prepare them to return. It would treat crime not only as a breach of law, but as a symptom of deeper wounds. Until that balance is found, both nations remain trapped in their own cycles, guarded by walls they built not just around their prisoners but around themselves. The story of prisons is not about cells and bars, it's about who we become when we hold power over others. A society's prisons are its mirrors. They reflect not just the crimes of the convicted but the conscience of the free. So the question isn't only which system is tougher, it's which system dares to change? Because in the end, punishment without progress is just pain, and no nation, no matter how advanced, can call that justice. If this story opened your eyes to what truly happens behind the walls, don't let it end here. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think? Is justice about punishment or redemption? And which system, if any, gets it right? Until next time, remember this. Freedom isn't just about walking outside the gates. It's about never having to see them close behind you.